Hey everyone, welcome to the Midpoint. Today we'll talk to Dilip Kumar, a super interesting person who has gone through a tremendous transformation. He was overworked, he was overweight, and super stressed out. Something had to change, and he did. He's now an endurance sports enthusiast. He runs marathons below 3 hours, which is super impressive. He's still a tech entrepreneur, but also an advocate for fitness and nutrition. It's going to be an interesting story on how he made all that change. But before we dive into that, I'd love if you could subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are and like the episode. Give us a review if you can. We really appreciate it. So let's welcome Dilip. Enjoy the show. Hey Dilip, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Hi, Rico. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
So today we're going to talk about health, fitness, nutrition. Let's see where this is taking us. But before we go there, I saw you on Strava this morning doing a run somewhere outside of Bangalore. Tell us, how did it go?
The run was good, not as refreshing as it's usually been for me, although it's peak summer where I'm staying. So I'm based out of Bangalore in India, and I am towards the last leg of my training for 10 kilometer. I have a race, 10K race coming up on this Sunday. So
nice.
legs are a bit beaten, cooked, and tired, but otherwise all good.
Oh, wonderful. How is it to run in sort of Bangalore's outer? How far out are you, by the way? Because it's India is a very big country.
Yeah, it is. India, of course. I mean, not related, but India is now probably the largest population in the world. So India is.
Oh, we heard that. Yeah, everybody read about that one.
Yeah, of course. So as an Indian, I'm not sure if I'm proud about that or how do I to feel about it. But India is definitely a big and a versatile country. Bangalore is the southern part of the country, and I am almost to the outside of the city. So not very outside, because Bangalore is a very growing city. It's also known as the tech capital of the country. It's also the Silicon Valley of the East, as the people call it on online. So yeah, so my side of where I stay, I mean, I have access to the roads, but I also have access to lush green farms, so I can get some trail runs. So my morning runs are usually very undistracted from both vehicular movement and humans. So that way it's good. But just because it's peak summers, it just becomes a bit hard to run when the sun is really on top of your head. But yeah, it's a good time and good place to be in if you ever come to in India.
Well, we have to maybe tell everybody listening here as well. We are not going to introduce Dilip as sort of the new online fitness coach, running guru or anything. It might be a little bit controversial, since all of this is online, to hear that you're not selling anything, are you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the listeners would get disappointed after whatever they hear about me as an intro, or maybe if they have read about me anywhere in the online world. I'm just an average Joe who realized and appreciated the importance of staying healthy mentally and physically a little late in life. And therefore, I took up to myself to learn and imbibe those best practices. So I am not a coach. I have no nutritional products to sell. I have no nutritional coaching to offer. I'm just here to say what worked for me.
No links to click left and right,
Yeah, nowhere. Absolutely zero. Please don't click anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm so always amazed how those algorithms on any social media, including sort of the video platforms, and how quickly they adjust. Like, you watch one video and you get sort of down the rabbit hole, and they get more detailed, very specific, sometimes very dogmatic. So this is not what I want to do today. We want to talk about your transformation, sort of what you've taken away from that. You've gone through a tremendous transformation. So why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about before and also after. What happened?
Sure. Yeah. Let me tell you current. So I'm 40-year-old, father of a 2-year boy, staying with my wife in Bangalore. Right now, I believe I'm probably in one of my best phases, both mentally and physically. I'm sure, and hopefully it would just improve from here on. But back in the years, in my 30s, so professionally, by the way, also, this is some context. I worked in most of my professional career in technology and startups. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my professional career, and right after college, I got into technology, related jobs, and in my early 30s, I started doing startups. So back then, when I look back now to my older pictures, I could realize that yes, there is a transformation. But when you're living that moment, you don't really understand, or you probably can't appreciate what is good or bad for you because you're living in that moment, right? So it's very easy for anyone to have a visual appeal when they see version A and version B. But when you are either of those versions, you don't know what is an ideal version to yourself. So I was living one of those moments in my early 30s when I was overweight, I was extremely stressed, and it was all an outcome of not having healthy lifestyle. Everything around startups kind of coming along to eating you very hard on your life. And just one day I realized enough is enough. Of course, there was this eureka moment which we can double click if you like to, but there was this moment in my life I said, I have to take a pause and probably rethink on my algorithm of life, how I want to design and program my future. And that was a moment, and running was an beautiful anchor to me at that time. And I just stuck to it, and I can now probably tag a few more identities to myself. I'm a runner, I'm a marathoner, so on and so forth. But that's a teaser to what the last 10 odd years have been.
I mean, I can completely empathize with that. I mean, if I remember correctly, sort of after school, after high school, sort of beginning of university, I was about below 80 kilos, sort of below 170 pounds, and well, 15 years, let's say 15 years later, I was 230 pounds, or sort of over 100 kilos, sort of 105 kilos. And I mean, I'm still in progress, working that all off. I'm trying to sort of replace the fat with the muscle. So I'm definitely bigger. I'm never going to be 78 kilos again for sure, just due to the muscle. But it maybe everybody comes to a point in life where you might realize that you've neglected some parts, and maybe in your 20s, the career might come into the way as well, or sort of you're very focused. And let's be honest, you don't put on pounds that easily when you're 20 compared to when you're 30. What was that phase for you like in the 20s? What distracted you in retrospect from taking care of your body?
Yeah, I think like any other average kid in India growing up, I think early your school and college, I used to play a bit of sports, but it was not really from an intent of staying fit. It was just for the enthusiasm of playing a sport. And as you may know, in India, one of the most widely known and played sport is cricket. So it just came very naturally to hang around with friends and enjoy that leisurely time when you're not when you're actually supposed to be studying, but hedge it with some playing cricket. So sport was merely a tool to have fun, but not really a mean to stay fit or really appreciate the nuances of health.
Hold that thought for a second before you go on. Maybe a little bit controversial question, but how much of a sport is cricket? If I would compare that straight with baseball, I don't think baseball is known for a lot of running. Maybe just sequentially when you hit the ball, then you run. Otherwise, like how much of a sport is it compared to running?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this question I'm sure is going to tip off almost a billion plus people if they had to,
1.5 now.
listen.
1.5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'm discounting the toddlers and infants, so probably around a million adults who are going to not be very happy by making a comparison to baseball and cricket. But yeah, I mean, look, cricket is, I mean, it's an aerobic sport in the sense it's got skill. At the same time, it needs to have a particular physiology. There's a lot of movement and running, both lateral and otherwise, and but it's got very good. I mean, it's got a technique driven, just like tennis or football. But football, of course, is more aerobic. But yeah, I mean, I can't do those comparisons because I played baseball myself. The only access to baseball for me has been playing video games. Very few of them. But for me, cricket was one of those tools growing up. But like I said, it was not really played or pursued to stay fit.
Yeah.
And then moved on. Life happened. You go to college, and then you move out, and like any other middle class Indian or otherwise, someone from middle class society, you would rather want to get a job, and those were the pursuits. And in my professional career, very soon I realized that maybe I'm not enjoying much in the corporate framework, and I decided maybe I have to start out and explore entrepreneurship. Again, it was not getting swayed by the glitter around entrepreneurship, because I was just bored by doing what my job is. So the only alternative was either to look for another job or perhaps figure out what I want to do with myself. So I chose the latter, and that was been a typical pursuit. So yeah, just to summarize, playing sport didn't come naturally to me. Even now, I mean, I don't play much sports. I mean, running, if you tag it as a sport, that's the only thing which I'm engaged with. But growing up years, sports was not really much of an integral part I can be proud of, though.
I think I read somewhere that you wrote, school and college failed to teach me sort of health and fitness. I feel we here in Switzerland, we also try to connect sports with play, to have fun. And I think for my kids, I also don't necessarily want them to become athletes at every sport they try. I think in at the center, the goal is that they have fun and find something they really enjoy, with the assumption if they really enjoy, they might train more. And if they're talented, if they want to continue, sure they can. Is that something that you would recommend for the schools or for sort of the society in general to change, that we teach kids more about sort of aerobic training, sort of what do you need as a baseline to just basically stay healthy, or what's your intent when you say they failed me to teach?
Yeah, I mean, I first of all want to put up I want to elaborate on the sentiment. Essentially, first of all, it's a very cultural experience, right? I mean, whatever I have experienced was very specific to where I was at that part of my life and my environment and my situation. It may not be very true for my peers in other parts of the city, in the country, or maybe globally, right? So culturally, in India, when you're growing up in your school, and I'm talking about early 90s, 80s, sports were largely an extracurricular activity. Right? It was not a
Oh, I see.
primary activity which is anchored. And I understand now, because over the past many years, I have absorbed and I've consumed cultural experience globally. I've been in Europe and US and elsewhere. Understand culturally we are very different. Now, of course, things have changed. So, when I was growing up, like I said, sports used to be a very dedicated slot in your school time. It's either some blocked around sometime early in the morning or late in the afternoon, and you're just supposed to play some game, right? So that's the entry point. The entry was not largely, hey, sports can be a tool or a means to explore yourself. It could be your identity, your character, or any other ancillary experience like team bonding, discipline, all of that. Right? It was just a sport. And some people would probably hive off from them to say, if they like some sport, it's mostly skill driven. So, in school, they would have a football team or a cricket team or a basketball team. And there it would be largely from a competition point of view, because you're doing school competitions and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So most of the definition of sport, at least in my, like I said again, very specific to my situation, was mostly this is a slot which you can get in and enjoy if you want, and then come back and focus on primary, what is you're supposed to be coming to school, that's studies or education. And the same philosophy also kind of resonates back in your family, right? Because middle class Indians, they live most of their life earning money so that they can send their kids back to school. And it's funny. It's a cyclical situation, right? And that's what every parent has done. And that kid would go out and probably one day become a parent, and they would also do that to their future kids, right? So that culture, when you see it, it pretty much sinks, because when you're at home, parents are expecting, and again, situation have changed, significantly and dramatically.
Mhm.
In right now, we are talking about 2023, but almost 20, 25, 30 years back, it was not the case, right? And therefore, the sentiment which I made a post online was, I could not, or rather, I could not learn the importance of staying healthy and eating right, and what eating right means, and what should be the right eating and what should be the wrong eating,
Mhm.
in my school, or perhaps my family didn't really inculcate in a very specific way, right? Of course, at home you are asked, hey, eat this, but you are not given a theory behind why that's healthy or why you should eat that. And if it comes
Mhm.
to you with a good palate, you would eat it as a kid, and if it doesn't taste well, you probably ignore it. And your ignorance is essentially later on, uh, uh, contradicted by saying, hey, this is good for you and therefore you should eat it, but you still don't have the logic or the reasoning why that's good for you, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, yeah, to sum it up, that was my sentiment. I could not learn, even if someone was teaching to me, it was not direct enough for me. And I put a blame to myself. I'm not putting the blame to anyone else.
No, of
But I
course.
realized it late in my life, and I thought maybe probably I should go back to first principles and learn it again.
Yeah, I mean, so you can definitely not teach your kids right away, because you can, but they will ignore it because the sugar size just tastes so much better. But I think at
Yeah.
an age of 16, 18, 20, 22, I think you can definitely start to think about and see what that could mean, although you don't see the immediate impact because you're just burning everything through your metabolism at that time, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and in fact, I mean, just to kind of give you a real anecdote, right? I mean, I'm not sure how's the culture in Switzerland, but in India, even now, I see often when someone visits, a guest comes to your house, and they're visiting a kid, they will mostly take a chocolate or a
Hmm.
pastry. They will
Hmm.
probably not take a apple or an orange or any fruit, right? So sweet is essentially injected early on, more as a cultural greeting, right? Because you're going. I mean, that's a culture in India, right? When you visit someone, you have to take something as part of the greetings, right? And mostly you are dipping in some sweet products,
Hmm.
chocolates mostly, or
Oh,
pastry
that's
or
super
cakes, and
interesting.
that's all right.
Yeah.
And I don't see that. I mean, at least from the limited experience I've traveled outside of India, I haven't seen much in Europe or US. Right? So
I
that
think
itself, you
there's
see early on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's the notion of sharing and sort of offering something, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be a healthy offer. I think over
Yeah.
here. Yeah,
And it's
I would
weird.
say
I
it's
mean,
super
when
interesting.
someone brings a fruit, you would probably look upon, and the kids would feel disappointed because why would you bring a fruit, right?
I was
Because that's
promised chocolate.
yes, and also it's funny, right? I mean, the way the parenting had happened, funnily, right? I mean, you would always incentivize the kid. It's like a stick and carrot model. You would incentivize the kid that if you do something, you would be given a chocolate, or
Yeah,
if you don't do that, I will gift you an ice cream. So very early on, kids are essentially cemented with this thought process that hey, that's good for you,
yeah.
and they don't realize that their metabolism is going for a toss early on.
Gotcha. Super interesting. So now going back to a little bit of double clicking on your story, when you came to that realization, I think one quote I found from you is, "Everyone has a reason to change. We all need to find that reason." What was yours? I find this a brilliant quote. Honestly, tell us what yours was.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, when I was going through the I mean, I didn't realize it was a transformation moment for me. That was one of our eureka moments. In my early 30s, I was doing this startup, technology-related startup, so extremely stressful. And there was this one fine moment when I was just getting down off my staircase in my apartment, and
Hmm.
I toppled and I twisted my ankle. And I call that as a eureka moment because that was the baseline to everything what happened to me. Right after. So my ankle got twisted, and uh, you know, quickly to tell you the story, I was supposed to travel to Germany. And I did travel, and I went to a doctor and said, my ankle is twisted. What do I do? He said, that's all is well. So you probably, don't worry and just go. So I went to Germany, and it was peak December. It was extreme cold. I came back to India, and my leg just swelled. So essentially, long story short, it was a wrong diagnosis. It just became acute ligament tear because I was not diagnosed properly. Went to
Hmm.
a surgeon, and the doctor says that I have to go through a surgery, and they probably will have to put some rod and all of that stuff. And then let's look. I was reading up online. I was like, it's too early of my in my personal life to get through a surgery, right? Because there could be some consequences. You're just injecting implants and rods. I said, what's a natural way to do a rehab? He said, you have to go to a physiotherapy. So I went to a physiotherapy, went through a normal rehab procedure, and the physio there said that, look, one form of rehab is you probably have to jog. And I freaked out. I said, look, mentally, I'm not prepared to put my leg into stress again because I freak out every time I see a stone on the road. He said, no,
Hmm.
that's the way you have to strengthen your ankles and your ligaments by making it back to movement. So I remember my physio said, you have to go back every morning, 10, 15 minutes, you have to jog. And the pictures, if anyone would be seeing on the screen, or any reference you may have, was of those times where I told my wife, look, I'm going out for a jog. I came back and I told my wife, I saw a human who was jogging nonstop for 15 minutes. How is it possible? So that was my revelation. Like, how can humans nonstop move for 15, 20 minutes? And that, how naive I was, because that just explains my definition of fitness at that time. So that was that point for me. And in India, again, it's a cultural thing. We have something called medical insurance, where you can submit your medical bills and
Hmm.
you can claim back the money as part of
Hmm.
your reimbursement, right? So it
Hmm.
comes around roughly around $500, $600 US dollars equally.
Hmm.
So end of the year, you have to collect all the medical bills and give it to your finance person so that he can give you that reimbursement. So I sat down and I realized that my collective total of my medical bills were almost more than 60% of my annual income then.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that was a revelation for me. And when I sat down to sift through the bills, there was not a single part of my body where I haven't seen shown to a doctor. Right. From head to toe, I've been visiting hospitals left, right, center. But none of that really dawned upon me, because those were just happening
Yeah.
month on month. But when I sat down and you do those analysis, people mostly do their wealth portfolio, and I was trying to do my health, understand what's happening with me. instead of
That's where we
getting
should start.
instead of getting $300, I probably might have got nothing less than $2,000 worth of medical bills.
Wow.
So I was shocked. So yeah, so that was my reason. That was my moment. At that point, I realized it's not about how much you earn, how much you spend your energy in life. It's more about how much you conserve, and how much you bring back to your life.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, just to cut to philosophy, I realized enough is enough, and got to make a change.
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing you cannot get back once you lose it, right? So in a way, or it might be very expensive, but it's definitely something you can't just buy if you want to be healthy. So you need to work and put it to work. What did you do? What did you change after that revelation?
Yeah, I mean, I tried a lot. Like I said, that point when I was supposed to do these jogs,
Hmm.
somehow that as an activity really excited me. A jog progressed to running, and I felt running was a very liberating experience when you go out early in the morning. There is zero traffic on the road, at least those days when I used to run. Fresh air, fresh mind. You're not convoluted with a lot of thoughts because you're just out from your bed. So those 30 to 45 minutes, 60 minutes over the weekend would really give me a sense of great accomplishment. And I would come back. Now, when I look back, I could probably say, okay, that's what the endorphins were, or that's what the runner's high is. But I was happy when I come back. I felt a great sense of achievement that I've unlocked something new in my life every new day. So that was that awakening moment, and I think it naturally made me stick to it and build up a consistency.
Hmm.
Back then, if you had to ask me, did you had any goals to be where you are today? None. Losing weight was not the goal. Being a marathoner or being a fast marathoner or whatever that could be, a sub 3 marathon, was not really a goal. The goal was just to go back and just experience that feeling again. And it just built a streak, and it just gave me some consistency, and I just kind of progressed from there.
Yeah, I see that with myself. I played, by the way, hated running most of my life. I did team sports, swimming, cycling, but otherwise, I mean, I always tried to avoid running. And for many people, exactly how you described it is sort of how can I get to actually running continuously? That's sort of the biggest hurdle. A lot of people don't. Maybe it's also partially embarrassment when you obviously walking and obviously have to stop and restart. How did you get over that hump? I mean, it was just basically how long did it take you? Was it just a non-issue and just up in your head, or how did that go about?
Yeah, I think what worked for me is pretty much a template, what would eventually work for everyone. And what I mean by that is not everyone should take up for running, right? I mean, it could be any physical movement which could give you those high. For some, it could be yoga, some it could be swimming, some it could
Sure.
be, gymming.
Yeah, sure.
So, every human individually would have those moments when they feel that this is that activity where, they can relate to. Like I said, I have friends who, like you said, they don't like running, they hate running, and I find it very odd, like how can someone hate running, because I am so deep into it, right? I mean, running is more than just a sport for me. It's it's hard for me to describe what running means at times, but I think what worked for me is essentially going back with that consistency for that feeling. I was essentially selfish and hungry to get back to that feeling. It's funny. It's like if you have chocolate, you would want to go back and eat that chocolate again, or it could be a particular ice cream. In my case, it could be a red velvet pastry. So if I have one, I can't stop. I want to have it another, right? So that feeling, what you get when you eat something great or watch something great, you want to have that again. So for me, it was just to get that feeling back, because everything else what was happening with me throughout the day was not giving me that high. It was when I was going back to bed with a sense of feeling that I couldn't achieve anything today. But that 30 to 45 minutes made me feel I achieved a lot. It's very hard to explain what that achievement was, but it really gave me that sense feeling. So for me, it was just that feeling, just to go back and get that feeling again.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. I mean, you alluded to it already a little bit, that it's not just the running, but also sort of the quiet in the morning with sort of empty streets. And I'm pretty sure that outside, even outside of Bangalore, you'd have a lot of traffic, a lot of sort of commute happening very soonish. So maybe it was all of it in the morning that got you started. Did you feel it had an impact on the rest of your day, on your productivity, on sort of how you tackled sort of other issues at work or in other places after doing those runs?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, like I said, that feeling compounded on me day by day, month on month, and eventually it started. It made me appreciate what time management is. I mean, of course, the upside was that yes, I was energetic. It's funny because when you put yourself to a physical stress, it's very odd when someone says you feel more energetic. But for me, and I'm sure for most of the runners, it's that feeling, right? It makes them feel energetic. It gives them that feeling and sensation that you have more to offer to the day and to people around you. So for me, definitely there was a feeling, but it also gave me a lot of other intangible upsides. Like I started appreciating time, I started getting disciplined, and probably we can talk if you think that's appropriate. That how I started getting better with some structured training, and therefore discipline came in. Right now my schedule is very regimented, and for a lot of people it's very boring because I have a templatized day in day out calendar. But yes, I had those upside feelings.
This is the moment where you could sell this with a link. I have this template that everybody can buy from me, which you're not, right? Well, tell us about it. So what's the discipline regimen that you have today? Like fast forward to a marathoner that runs below 3 hours. Like how do you what compounds all of your workouts throughout the week?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, when I tell few of my friends that look, I live an athlete life, and they joke like, look, the definition of athlete is either you have to be an Olympian or you probably would have to compete at the world champs. I said, no, I am none of them, but I still, um, I live and I train like an athlete life, and rather an hybrid athlete life, because yeah, fast forward, I'm a marathoner today, which means, in a typical year, I will probably race 2 marathons and a few half marathons and maybe a few 10 kilometers. And therefore, I'm training pretty much throughout the year. And that training is essentially this Bible or a preamble for me, which kind of dictates my life today. It's everything centered around the training. And I've been super lucky to have a family, specifically my wife, who is a great connoisseur of good food. So therefore, we enjoy cooking, prepping our food ourselves. I think one of the greatest hack of 21st century, which I figured it out, is to cook food in batches. So that kind of helps for usual professionals, because they're extremely busy. So we would actually cook at least for 2-3 days in batches, and that doesn't mean we eat the same thing, but we have a base. So it could be, you could have your salads, or if you could have a pasta, or you could have millet or quinoa, any of those stuff, and just have that as a base and put in some stir fried veggies or chicken or whatever your dietary choices are, and then make it the way you want.
So not you're not the meal prepper like the million social media influencers out there that show sort of how to eat the same dish for 7 days. You're basically recombining. So you basically create a batch of something that you can reuse, but then you combine it with other stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends. Like say in India, mostly we are more heavy carb eater. So therefore, if any choice of carbs, it could be rice, or it could be, like I said, any of the superfoods. So have it. Yet again, I'm getting multiple business ideas what I could eventually sell to the online world, but as of now, I have nothing to sell. I have to put that disclaimer. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a hack which worked for me, and I guess the few friends I suggested, it seems to be working for them. So yeah, these are few easy hacks to see how you can be a little more efficient with time, so that you can continue to eat home cooked food.
Yeah, I mean, you say you're a heavy carb eater. I think the whole world is, depending on sort of what the base is, be it potatoes or rice or etc. I can top that actually. Sort of when we are having Indian food with my Indian colleagues, I was eating the rice with my naan. And everybody goes like, no, you don't do that. You either eat rice or you eat naan. You don't combine both. So maybe they gave me health advice instead of cultural advice.
Yeah, that's a first world sin if you combine two carbs together, but it might naturally come to an Indian when when you see rice and naan together. But yes, I mean, I think like any elsewhere in the world, I think every culture is very very unique. Like what works in Europe is very different from what works in US, and therefore rest of the world and Asia.
No, for sure. But I like the healthy food prep advice here. My goal is to, and I'm joking here, to get a 6-pack. I've seen you also talk about that. We don't necessarily need to go too far into that, but I think it's common knowledge for the 20-year-old out there. When you're 30, when you're 40, maintaining a 6-pack might not be the healthiest advice. What would you sort of, as you grow older, what would be your advice when it comes to muscles?
Yeah, I mean, I have a very funny analogy to it. It's something like, it's tough to remain a millionaire or billionaire than becoming a millionaire and billionaire, right? You can become a billionaire, but to remain a billionaire throughout your life is very hard, right? And I think for me, 6-pack remains the same. I mean, it's easier to have a 6-pack, but to maintain a 6-pack is very hard. And nothing against it, right? I mean, there are so many folks out there, men and women, who can have 6-pack, but and I can't really comment whether it's good or bad to the health or not. But it will keep you away from those happy moments in life where you also need to occasionally have that ice cream or your chocolate or your dessert, or and you can't as much as you may want, right? So for me personally, I realized when I looked at what all I need to sacrifice to get a 6-pack, I said, no, I mean, that's not for me, because I don't want to sacrifice my occasional beer, or my occasional biryani, which is, one of the
Mhm.
well-known dishes in India.
It's delicious.
Because yes, and you need to indulge in these, small things in life, and so therefore you can get to a six pack, but you can't be off track to enjoy it. So for me, that was the point, right? That you don't have to. Everyone, I mean, fitness and being healthy need not be defined as a metric where you're counting your six packs or your jawline. Fitness and healthy
Because that's
is
what we see on social media, right? That's what is portrayed on social media. That's they all look great. Most of them, I'm not sure sort of how they got there, whether they took the easy route or the difficult route. What I was pointing at as well is just in terms of muscle building as you grow older. That's actually the key. I was at a time in Asia visiting a doctor because I had always this neck pain. And it was a little bit of a revealing moment, not necessarily for a transformation, but just basically to start training strength. She basically said, look, we can either operate or you start training your muscles. And I was really shocked to hear that from a doctor. But she kind of slapped me, wake me up in a way verbally to get into strength training. And I think building muscle, more importantly, maintaining muscle is something that everybody should do, just especially when we grow older, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, especially, yeah, you're very right. I think for people, I mean, I think it's very odd to say people who age, but let's call it people who are becoming younger by, going up on their age radar. I think it's super important because our physiology is first to know that it's not what it used to be in your 20s and 30s, right? And therefore, there was a research done which said that if you fall when you're in your late 50s and early 60s, there are higher chances of death, and the chances are increases 65% more, just because you don't have that physiology anymore for longevity, right? So therefore, strength training is super important, and this is regardless whether you are pursuing any athletic sport like running, swimming, cycling, or any for that matter, right? You have to, and this is relevant for everyone, regardless of gender, whether it's male or female. Everyone need to do strength training of some kind. So yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize more on the importance of strength training. If you want to remain injury free, pain free for a longer happy life, you have to indulge in strength training.
And it was ultimately also the revealing moment for you, right? Initially, when you tripped, that which created this chain of events up to your crazy medical bill. Now, maybe if we can circle back to sort of those trainers that are out there to pay a lot of money, or all the algorithmic videos. I feel like you've been also saying that you've rather started to read up on sort of the scientific side, on the research. Like, what would be your advice for all of us out there that, are bombarded with these videos wherever we go, sort of to sharpen our critical thinking a little bit? What should we look out for? How can we cut through the clickbaits and the bullshit? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was an absolute, 3 or 5 best practices which can save the world. But we have to understand that the world we live in, it's a world of capitalism and consumerism, which means people are making money off you by selling you all the time. Every minute you watch something, every minute you read something, every minute you listen something, you've been sold something. But unfortunately, you and me right now don't have anything to sell. Maybe that's a good part on our, or maybe bad part on others, but that's the reality. And therefore, I think it goes back to fundamentals and first principle that you need to build that resilience and maturity in yourself, not to be vulnerable enough so that you can become victimized and having someone sell you something, right? And that comes, I think, with a sense of curiosity. And when we were kids, and everyone, at point of time when they were kids, I think mm, much of our knowledge which we enjoyed came from that sense of curiosity of learning and knowing why that happened. For example, why does an aeroplane fly like that, or why does a train move like that? right? Or how does a car move like that? And we would go back to our elders or our parent or anyone, and they would basically explain us in first principles that this is how mechanical engineering is, or this is what an automobile engineering is. So I think that's a sense of curiosity, and therefore I think that is your biggest weapon. It's a biggest I feel that sense of curiosity is the greatest indulgence you can have in your life, right? Because that's your tool. It's a superpower. So if you have that curiosity and you could learn and understand why you should have protein, why should protein be a maximum intake, why you should keep your carb low, what are the type of vitamins, and this comes regardless. And therefore, my previous point, right? These are not taught in your school and college, right? Depending on whether you are a science student or a non-science student, it doesn't come to you in a very natural way. And I feel these should be basics.
It should be.
Like every human, when they are born, they have the right to know what is good for them and what is bad for them in terms of what goes inside their body. So I think for me, what worked again is a sense of curiosity, because I was also, like I said, like you said, was exposed to a lot of this social media glitter, and I was confused because I have someone saying that you should have low carb and someone telling me zero carb, and I was super confused. I didn't know whether I should have a whey protein or a plant protein or a vegan protein. So I went to the dark side to read and understand. I think the best literature I found was scientific research papers. They are plain and English. There are means for researchers to put their knowledge and put their research out there to the world to say this is what they have done. So I would recommend anyone that, because no one is selling you anything in research papers. These are findings that can be right or they can be wrong, right? So best place to start is go and pick up any of those research papers to understand. It's very simple. At the onset, people may get really overwhelmed and intimidated. Like, look, I don't have a PhD background, and how would I interpret what is written? These are simple languages, right? And these are far more valuable than a clickbait article.
Yeah.
Or when you go and put it on Google to say that how much of protein should I eat, or how much of magnesium should I take, there are 10 guys who would at the disguise of giving you knowledge would sell you something, because they want to sell you the magnesium pill, they want to sell you the protein powder, and they're going to tell you that they are the best supplement company. But if you read the research papers, they're not going to sell you anything. So I think that can be a good starting point, which essentially makes you more educated to, even if you chance upon those clickbait articles, you would have the know-how to filter whether it's right or wrong. Right? I mean, you can't keep yourself away from clickbait articles.
I would say,
I mean, that's the world.
Yeah, I would say in general, sort of, don't pay for stuff at the beginning, right? Sort of as you start out and as you start diving deeper, the research part is really, really useful, because there's necessarily no intent there to make money of it. If there are good articles and good videos out there on social media, but as soon as they start to say like my formula is the best, then you shouldn't follow. Maybe you shouldn't follow further. Yeah. No, good. That's super insightful, and thank you so much for taking your time. Although you didn't want to sell anything, I believe that you made plenty of advertising for the Swiss chocolate industry throughout this episode, from the beginning to the end. It sounds like that's your craving. I don't even need to ask for that. I know that chocolate pops into your head whenever you think of sugar.
It would be hard for people to believe if I say I have at least one bite of dark chocolate every day. I mean, I would love if any chocolate company in Switzerland would want to reach out to me and sponsor me for any marathons. I don't mind.
let me do some agent work for you there when it comes to sponsorships. Thank you so much for taking your time, Dilip. And if there's anything you want to know about about nutrition, do not ask Dilip. He's not sending or selling you anything, but you can definitely follow him on social media. We'll put everything, also his website, into the show notes. Please follow, if you like the episode, follow this podcast, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening here. Like the episode, give us a review, please. And thank you, Dilip. All the best, and I look forward to catching up again.
Thank you, Rico. Pleasure it was, and I hope the conversation was useful to the listeners. Absolute pleasure, and I look forward to another opportunity to talking to you again.
Thanks, man. Good luck with the competition this weekend.
Thank you very much, and have a great weekend to
Bye.
you.